Hi guys, I'm Jen. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about the importance of our emotions, using them to recognize what we're experiencing, um, how to release them, and why we want to manage and balance them. So when I first started on my healing process, um, I just remember I was just crying all the time. Like I was crying. I was all the time. Something was hurting all the time. And it just felt like nobody had my back. I was constantly doing something for everybody else, but I couldn't receive. I was a single mom at the time, and I was dealing with so many men that were just toxic. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm just like, something is wrong with this. Why am I, like, I remember I was dealing with a man who we were dating, but then it turned into a situationship because he had told me that he didn't want to work on our relationship because he had decided to work on his finances. And a short period after that, because we had remained friends for some stupid reason at the time, naive. And so I still friends with him on Facebook. And I remember seeing a picture that he had taken with another woman and her on his lap. And this is someone who had just told me maybe a few months previously, like, I don't want to work on our relationship because I need to work on my finances first. That's not working on your finances. He did move back home with his parents to save up his money and not pay rent. So that was a red flag. But anyways, the emotions that I was being controlled at the time was, this man was making me jealous. You know, I felt jealous. There were people around me that I felt jealous by. And not to the point of coming out of my lane, but I felt jealous. I was just like, you know, I wish I could be more like them. I wish I could be more like that. And there is also, I felt bad. I felt bad. Like, it was really weird. It's like I felt like part of it was guilt. Part of it was guilt. I don't know, like, yeah, I don't. And so what I've learned is, moving forward, those are some huge emotions that I've experienced for a long period of time. The guilt, giving out of guilt, feeling guilty, so I give. Feeling like I'm not good enough, and so I have to overcompensate. That's guilt. And then also, like, when men would make me feel jealous, it used to pull me in, and then it got to the point where it what do you call that, I want to say rejection, but it repulsed me. That's what it was. The ick factor was huge. It's interesting because, like, the jealousy would normally bring me back in, and that's what they were doing it for, right? And then it got to a point where I saw it for what it was, and I no longer react to or connect with jealousy. Now, when I first experienced that jealousy, what I was learning is that was a sign that I had to actually, instead of be drawn to the person who made me feel jealous, I had to go internally and find out what was making me feel that way. Why did I feel jealous? And so when I learned that I was feeling jealous because I didn't feel like I was enough, I had to go and give to myself instead of give to other people. So if you're feeling jealous, that's not a reason to run back to that person who's making you feel jealous. For me, it was a reason to say, like, if this is like a peer that you're jealous of, maybe like, I'm a woman, so I see a woman who is, in shape, successful, doing what she loves, is confident, and has, like, her material foundation, then that's a sign for me. Like, I got to figure out, like, what am I, in that moment, what am I feeling, what aspect of her am I feeling jealous about? So, like, if I, this could be someone who is really well put together and in shape. So if I'm like, you know what, I'm feeling like a potato, I'm not wearing what I want to wear, and now I feel that I'm triggered, I'm feeling some sort of way, so that's a sign for me to say, okay. And then if she has the clothes, and then I go say, well, do I have clothes? I have clothes that I want to wear, I just don't fit in them. or I have to also recognize, like, is that an unattainable like standard for me at this point, right? um, so recognizing more about it and pulling a string on why am I feeling jealous right now, and why am I not feeling good enough. And then I had to also look at my belief systems around that, because the man that was trying to make me feel jealous, like I also felt jealous because he was giving his attention to everybody but me. So when I felt that jealousy, instead of feeling like I had to do more for him, which is what he wanted more, he wanted me to do more. That made him feel good, controlling me like that, and it's actually really gross. And so I had to look at, I'm feeling jealous because this person gets his attention, this person gets his attention. It's like I was put on the shelf, and like I get his attention when he's bored. That's not a person for me. That's not my person. That's not my people, and he didn't see my value, and because I didn't see my value, and I was still accepting that sort of behavior. So I had to disconnect from that person and start giving to myself instead of giving to them. And that took a process, because it wasn't my choice in the beginning, because I got discarded, because he was fine being a situationship. He was fine getting sex from me. I got lots of attention when he wanted to have casual sex with me. But like between those periods, like if I didn't reach out to him, I wasn't getting anything. So I had to look at, that's unhealthy. But it also represented my childhood in a way where it's like, you know what, there's 3 kids and I did not like get attention from my father. I was neglected. He was emotionally disconnected. And so that's where I had to look at my childhood and find out what was going on there. And I also recognized that I was not developed as a child to be secure, to be confident, to speak on things. So like even when I tried to talk to this man in this situationship to try and tell him what the issue was, like it was always my fault, and he would put it on me like I'm insecure, which I was actually at the time, but so was he, because anyone who requires more than one person and the attention from all these people, that's insecure. And so I was using him as a mirror. And at the time, that would have been labeled, I was following that twin flame journey. And I learned that like, I did do a lot of healing, because for me, I was like, if I just become that perfect person, then I'll attract. And it's not even about a perfect person. I want to become the partner that I wanted. And when I fell into that twin flame journey, that's where they convince you that while you're working on yourself, that other person is doing the same thing or something similar, right? That was it was part of my process, and I guess it helped. It was like a carrot, motivate me, because I'm like, you know what? Because I thought I needed this person to help me parent my kids and form my family. And I really already had my family there. It was me and my 2 kids and my pets. That's all I really needed. I thought I needed something outside of myself to be successful, to provide for my kids. But like these people in that moment, I was not healthy or balanced. So like anyone else, like that I would have brought in from the outside, my echo chamber was unhealthy and unbalanced. So like that's just doubling the damage. And so had I just remained single and focused on me and mine, I think that would have fast tracked while we need to experience certain things, looking back now, giving advice to other people, if you feel like you're just attracting the wrong type of partners, I would stop looking for a partner and just invest in yourself. And if you feel like you're getting lonely, connect with who's in your environment, connect with your kids, connect with your pets, and let that be enough. Because I think it was like a fear of missing out. It's also like that subtle message of like, you need a partner to help support you. And the thing is, whenever I was involved with this man, nothing was working. He wasn't a partner. He came to he would take food from my fridge, from my kids. I would pay more than he would pay. I remember one of our Valentine's Day, like I bought him like a hat, which was $40, and I filled it like a basket because he wanted this hat. And so I bought him the hat. I bought beard oil. I bought I think I bought him like deli sticks, you know, like pepperettes or whatever. Reese's, because he really liked Reese's. And like I filled the cap, and I'm thinking there's like at least $100 in that cap. And he brought me like grocery store tulips. Grocery store tulips. Wow, how thoughtful, how investing. I had spent like how much time finding these items, thinking of these items, and he literally just like stopped off at like the No Frills that was on his way to my house and grabbed me, no thought, tulips. And this isn't like, oh, we didn't have the money. He had the money. His kids were in competitive sports, you know? So I just got to the point where it's just like, this guy is not doing it. And so he wasn't bringing anything to the table. And this is the same man who's like, he had to go back to his parents' house to save money. And I'm doing this on my own as a single mom, and I'm not receiving, this wasn't the father of my kids, but the father of my kids, he was financially abusive and not giving me child support. And so this man like could have, instead of moving back to his parents' house, could have, you know, committed, and we could have worked as a team together to provide, because he was separated from his mom's kids, the mom of his kids. So we could have built a team. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to go back to his parents' house and not pay rent, you know, and have his dad cook for him and live under the safety net of his parents. So that showed me. And at the time, I still didn't know that, because for me in this time, I not only didn't have, I just didn't have good advice. I didn't have a good foundation of like security and self-esteem and self-worth. I just thought like, I didn't know how to recognize when someone was putting in effort, and I couldn't really tell, like I had to get good with like, what am I offering and what are they not offering? Because I give people the benefit of the doubt, because I'm not perfect, so I don't expect other people to be perfect, but it feels like these people in my environment were taking advantage of that, and I was letting them. And so what this has to do with the emotions is, the longer you stay connected and the longer you lack boundaries, this actually affects your emotional situation. And because you're going to be struggling longer, which is an emotional place, you know, and the longer you tolerate and make excuses and have that, give them a benefit of the doubt, the more you do that, the more you're going to grieve and be, the love is unrequited. You're going to be betrayed. And so I had to learn how to cut that off sooner. So I no longer give chances. You know, I don't invest anymore. When I see something, I move back. And so like, if you're unsure, if, you know, you need to be given to this person, if you feel confusion about how they feel about you, and if you feel jealousy, those are reasons. Confusion, chaos, and jealousy, those are all, jealousy and, you know, confusion, those are signs where I'm like, I pull back. You know what? I don't want to move towards that. Because they're going to, when people do this is like emotional manipulation as well. It's like that hot and cold energy. And like, they'll tell you they're one of their best friends, but they treat you like a stranger. That's conflicting information, right? Your actions aren't, you're saying, oh, you consider me a good friend, but you haven't talked to me in 3 months. That's not good friends. That's not good friends. So I had to start getting clear when I was you know, watching this situation, when I was in my emotions, the more I brought logic into the emotional place and balanced it out with logic, I was able to see that these people are full of shit. And I was giving so many chances because I was neglected as a child. And so I just wanted somebody around, because I was so lonely from childhood that when you're lonely, you attract to the wrong people. And it's interesting because I have family members kind of say like, well, you can't keep cutting people off like this. You're going to be all alone, acting like that's a bad thing. But I'm like, when you're in connections and you feel lonely, that's even worse, because you're becoming depleted. At least when I'm alone, it's me, myself, and I riding off my energy. You know, I'm not having to give and fit into your box, which is exhausting. And I get to, you know, when I'm around those people, like I can't speak. I can't say what's on my mind. I can't be honest, because honesty doesn't have room in these arenas with people who like to take all the time. And so I had to recognize where I needed to focus on me and mine. And it wasn't about looking for a partner. It was about simplifying, prioritizing, and simplifying meaning finding the simple things in life and valuing them. And this is like, you know, teaching my kids to play in the garden and play sports and not feel like I have to sign my kids up for sports. Like I used to think, I'd see all these people putting their kids in all these sports, and I thought I should do that for mine because they need to socialize. But when you realize who's out in that social arena, it kind of sucks. And so I wish I would have spent more one-on-one time with my kids and not worrying about like I was renovating my homes a lot because I wanted to like be done and off my list, but I also feel like I was doing it so that I could bring people into my house and not feel judged. But the people I was bringing into my house were going to be judging anyways, because in that time, that's who was in my environment. So I wish I would have spent more time with my kids and less on the renovations to provide a childhood home for them, because I felt embarrassed of my childhood home. I wanted my kids to have a nice home. But in that process, like I just overstressed myself and I was depleted, and my kids weren't getting enough of me. And so when you're over emotional like that, you also become emotionally unavailable to your kids. So when you're dealing with these assholes, these people who are so selfish, and you're not giving to you what your kids need first, like if your kids are having behavioral issues, you don't have time for a partner. And I think, well, if I had a partner, then I'd have more finances and I could, you know, spend more time with my kids and give them what they need. But what they need is not outside of you, it's you internally. And so when you're all caught up in emotional chaos and confusion, you can't come from there. Like you got nothing to give from there for your kids because you're exhausted and depleted. And so trying to bring other people into that environment is not a responsible place or step to take. And so I wish I would have done that differently. Because those people that I was bringing, like I said, because I was from such an unhealed, and I was in my emotional version, where it's like 75% emotional and 25% logical, the people I was bringing in, because I didn't know how to manage my emotions or recognize them or whatever, like they could just pull a string and off I go. You know, either I'm crying or I'm frustrated or I'm making bad decisions based on my emotional place and like my lack mindset. And so that's what would keep these people in this environment, because they were like, I didn't think I had anybody else, and I didn't, and that was okay. Being on my own was okay. I did not know that at the time. I thought it was scary to be by myself. I was very challenged because like I had a twin sister. I have a twin sister, but I don't talk to her because I'll do another story about that. But like, so like when you're limited on your interactions, when you're so enmeshed with like the family, and you're not socialized growing up, because we weren't socialized because we weren't allowed to talk. We were meant to be filler. You know, it makes socializing challenging when you get older. And so like the only people like I really connected with were like, you know, school, which would be like work, and then whoever's in our neighborhood. I don't know, it just seems very controlled. So yeah, it got to a point where I recognized that so once I got to recognize that people were controlling me through my emotions by guilt and jealousy, I learned how to not invest in those emotions. And I learned to recognize how they were controlling me, and that actually I'm going to be okay without these people because they never intended to stay. They never intended to give. And this is when I stopped making excuses for them. I stopped making excuses for myself, and I had to start making better decisions and become more responsible. And I had to get out of my delusion, because I was in a delusion. These people are in delusion as well. They think that you're going to hang around forever, and then you decide, no, this is not good enough for me. So then what happened was, okay, so before, when I was in that jealousy, I would react and I would message because I would be on this guy's Facebook and he knew I was watching because I had no life, because I was tired. As a single mom, I had no help. So like this is what he knew. I didn't like the clubs. I was looking for my person and he was looking for supply. It's very different. You know, I'm very happy with just finding my one person. I don't need attention from outside of myself. He did. And I recognized that, and I would call him on it and he would deny it, and then he would flip it back on me like I'm just insecure and you're just being jealous, and I'm not your ex, I don't cheat on you. And it's like, well, no, I can't even get a commitment from you, so how can you cheat if we're not in a commitment, right? So all these blurred lines made it very chaotic, and then I became obsessed with it because like the neglect from childhood was playing out now as an adult, and I just didn't get any sort of anything, breadcrumbs. And then people talk about like people being overly sensitive. It makes me feel like this is something from childhood, is not receiving, and being sensitive. Because I felt like I was very articulate to this person. I explained exactly what was bothering me and what I needed. And what happened was he just turned it on me, And I feel like that's relates to as a child too, is like my parents not knowing how to manage their emotions or be emotional or connect emotionally or, any of those things. And it was just my job now for them to say like, no, I can't give that to you for whatever reason. So now like I'm just meant to like shoulder this and carry this burden of like, this is all I can give you and this is supposed to be enough. And I'm like, well, it's not enough. I can't survive on like a dry desert of like a relationship where I'm receiving nothing, but I'm expected to give everything. Because that's what these people do. You're being built to be okay with breadcrumbs. And I don't think this is just relationships. I think this is society as well. They're expecting just to be okay with breadcrumbs, and that's enough. And meanwhile, they're getting like the whole fucking cake. And you're getting like the wrapper with the over sugary icing without any sort of like moist cake in there, And they're just like, take it or leave it. Like, that's all I'm going to give you. And you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to leave it then. Because they're counting on you and taking it. Because that sugar, that little bit of sugar is like the happiness that you get. You get like a little bit and you're like, okay, this will hold me off for a little bit longer. But when you recognize that sugar is toxic and the dynamic is toxic and it doesn't have to be like this, and you take your power back, that's when the logical mind has now entered the room and anchored itself and says, I no longer tolerate this bullshit. Because once you start to, it's almost like they try to get you into your mind like a ball of yarn that's been shaken up in a wool bag, and you go to try to take out, and you realize like all these strings it's like necklaces in a jewel box that haven't been hung up and organized, right? They all come together and they're all knotted, and you know how much time that takes to take the knots out of this fine chains? That's what a narcissistic type person wants. They want you to waste, they're time wasters. They're wasting your time. And so anytime you feel confusion, back it up. Get out. You can either, so like actually there's two things. I ask the hard questions. The questions that I've been dying to ask, that's what I say. That's what I speak. I speak my truth. You know what? It feels like you've been doing this. And so when I do that, I get answers. I'm going to see how they, are they going to attack me? Are they getting defensive? And it's natural for someone, if I have not been voicing my concerns and all of a sudden I come out and say, I don't like your behavior. Like, this is kind of like when I recognize within myself that I'm doing something that's keeping myself stuck and I haven't seen it, I'm going to get a sting. It's natural. It's natural. That's our ego. So, but what's not natural is someone coming out of their lane and then talking shit about you, isolating you, ignoring you, and not responding to you. That's not healthy behavior after you've given someone some truth or had like a moment to say, this is how I feel. This is how the situation makes me feel. What you want is someone who takes that information and says, okay, you want someone who's going to take that information, think it over. Because for me, when I do that with myself, I have to think it over and be like, am I doing that? And, this is where pattern recognition is helpful, because you'll be like, you know what? This is where I learned, like, this person, he was doing this over and over and over and over and over again. And then I dealt with him over and over again, on and off for 8 years, to finally recognize, like, well, a relationship I considered it like this could be really helpful for me. I was also a single mom and I was focused on my kids and trying to create a home for us and a life for us. So I wasn't centering this man, but he was definitely taking up a lot of my energy in that way. And when I recognized this guy is never gonna grow, like he's just not gonna grow, and that's when I finally decided to cut him off. And it felt good, but I had to like, that's where I had to see like a number of times to feel good about, like, you know what, I'm a type of person, I'm gonna give my all, I'm gonna work on it. And then I had to realize, like, blind loyalty is stupid. It's actually stupid to be giving to somebody regardless of how they're treating you. And that's where I recognize my religious background and the spirituality community are very toxic in some ways, because they really promote like hurt people are hurt people, or, you know, we must forgive, for they know not what they do, or something. I think that's part of the Bible. I don't know. But do you see, like, so I had to, part of this process of moving from the emotional mind to the more logical one has really helped me become more independent and like a free agent. And I don't label myself as a spiritualist, or you know, I'm not in a religion. I'm me and myself. I'm independent of self, and I'm still working on like becoming more financially free. But I had to get away from that, what was creating all these emotions. And so now I got something on my lip. Even when I moved away from these individuals that were creating these emotional storms, they're going to bleed on you. It's like, you know, not going outside and not expecting to get rained on when it's raining. Like, there's storm clouds out there and you can't expect that. Like, it's like trying to rake leaves when it's windy out. You're not going to be able to rake the leaves. The wind is going to keep messing up your leaf pile. You're never going to get that done, right? So these people are like that. But then I also had to recognize where there was an aspect within me that was like that as well. And so once you remove the people that are the emotional storm, you get to see what kind of storm you have inside your house. And that's where, like, we're pulling those balls of yarn, like where they wanted to be all interconnected with you because it kept you, you know, enmeshed and tight. As soon as you like throw that one ball away, that's them, and then you have your ball, then now you can get clear and be like, okay, how am I keeping myself stuck? Because as long as I'm enmeshed in that person, I kept myself in a very victim mindset. And while I can blame him and them, because it's not just him, it's like, you know, family patterns, it's like in coworkers, it's in work environments. Like, if you're experiencing this in love, the next step will be you're recognizing that you're experiencing in the workplace as well. So 2 birds, 1 stone. The sooner, when you recognize you're in toxic relationships, recognizing that you're in toxic dynamics in your workplace, that's, I mean, the sooner you want to awaken to that, the better. So because it's you're the common factor here, right? So like, a lot of people, I see these videos talking about men are this and women are that and narcissists this and empaths are, you know, like, we got to look at us as a whole and saying, like, this is me as a person is a problem. And so, like, for what I recognize in all this emotional mess was that I actually was the prey, and I was attracting predators because I was in an emotional place. Because it's like a top, you just pull the string and you go, and once they find your string, they just pull it and they keep, you know, and you're expending your energy and you're confused in all these circles and cycles. You see the top is spinning, you're repeating your cycles over and over again. And think of a top spinning when you're on one of those things where they spin you around and you can't, you know, you can't locate anything. You can't, and that's the anxiety as well, right? Like, when you have an anxiety attack, they're saying, you know, I need you to like recognize this in the room and look at this in the room and ground yourself and do all these things. Like, you can't do that when you're with emotionally abusive people. And the thing is, with the emotional abuse, it's a very gray area of abuse. And so it's hard to recognize it, especially when you're in it, because the thing is it's not just a one person. There's a team dynamic to it, and you're the prey, and it's predator with their teams, right? So like, that's the even worse of it. We'll do another video on that. But so once I separate myself from them, then I could also find out what were my emotions. And I don't believe in like absorbing other people's emotions. I do believe that other people, if will put their baggage onto you. and they require you to think about how they feel, but they don't care how you feel. And if you're raised in that sort of dynamic with your parents, there's a chance that you're very high risk to feeling bad for people, and that's why you give, and that's why you keep yourself quiet, because you feel bad for other people and you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. But once you start recognizing these people don't give two shits about making you feel uncomfortable, and the fact is they're going to take from you and they're going to be dirty about it, once you actually get that clarity, it gets easier. And so when I'm on my own, I had to recognize now my emotions. So what were some of my emotions on my own? I was getting frustrated. So because I was having to build on my own, it takes longer. But because you're not in see, these people are in sellout energy. The people who are looking for supply, they're sellout. And you can become that if you choose not to grow on your own, because the sellout energy is trying to fast track to get somewhere fast. But so while you're messing around with this person, you're losing time, you're losing resources, and you're losing finances, and you're losing energy, and you're losing your health. So the longer you're wanting to play around with this narcissistic player, indecisive, like unclear emotional being, where they don't seem emotional, they can actually be quite calm, but that's because they're structured and they've got a script, right? And you are the prey. And so once you get away from them, then you can start recognizing what's yours. And what I mean by that is there are certain when they're in the room, like they do things. It's like passive aggressive digs. It's like taking from you without giving back. That's out of balance. So that's going to affect your finances. You know, when I was working on my projects, not a lot of people, like when I was trying to build my online business, a lot of people would not respond about it. They wouldn't talk about it. It's like they wouldn't ask me about it. And while I wasn't successful, and I would make excuses. I'm like, well, I'm not successful, so maybe they think it's a touchy subject. But it's like, well, if they think it's a touchy subject and they're a supporter for me, why wouldn't they support my channel in order to, help that, right? So I'd have to get more logical like that. And yeah, so then, okay, so I'm trying to think of, so when I would get frustrated, that was a sign of impatience. And okay, so when you're outside of them, this is when you learn about how you're doing things that are actually creating an emotional reaction. Okay, I guess that's how I'm trying to say it. So when I was on my own, I noticed that I settle when things get tough. I look for a partner, and they're a partner that I'm settling with, because I don't want to have to make the hard move and the scary move that I need to make in order to amp myself, like elevate myself. And so while you look like, it's easy to blame that person, and don't get me wrong, like they do have negative traits to them, but like I was keeping myself stuck by staying with them. And I was avoiding the hard work that I needed to do in order to remain and become, or not remain, but become independent of self. And so that's when I found myself settling. And then, so when settling, what it looks like is like, I think it's like what they would call anxious attachment. So I grab onto somebody, and it was almost like a form of like limerence, and creating a potential for someone without actually knowing who they were, because I needed to feel like I wasn't totally alone. And like, why is being alone is not bad, but I'm associating it because I don't feel confident in myself to be alone. So I still needed that sort of like that feels like a supply in a way, right? And that's why, so like the challenge is like empaths and narcissists can be very similar, but I also feel like we mirror different, like for different reasons, but similar things within us. And so when you start to see that, you start to lose the blame, and then you also, the resentment, you lose the resentment. So if you're still in resentment, it means you're still blaming them for your problems. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. They want to blame everything on the narcissist. And don't get me wrong, some of these narcissists are dirty. Like, I don't know how, I would never consider doing the things that they've done to me. I would not. I used to put myself on them. Like, I used to think that I would do things for them because I was hoping that they would do those things for me, and they weren't. So like where you're hoping for something, hope without action is humiliation. And so I found out all these things about how I was actually putting myself in these situations because I was the prey and I was inexperienced in life, even at the age of 46. And so I had to learn how to go back and almost after a severe sexual abuse and Mean Girls and just like a whole afternoon shift environment, isolation, I had to leave a workplace, and that's when I really became aware of this, where I was ignoring red flags because it was more important for me to remain in connections because I was so lonely, and I was making excuses for people's bad behaviors. And I thought, well, maybe if I led by example, they would learn, and maybe they just don't have the answers, so they just need to see it. You know, much like a parent gives the kids an example to live by. That's kind of what I was thinking, because I could see the immaturity in some of these coworkers, and I realized that was not the case. So when I remained by myself, instead of trying to find a romantic partner, I learned to recognize these things within myself, and then it helped me to learn what I was doing to keep myself stuck. Okay, so the settling, that told me that I'm avoiding elevation. And it meant I was avoiding the hard things. And so that's what told me. So like I used to do cards on this channel, but I felt like it was too evasive, and like, how do people know if this is for them? And while it's important to recognize for yourself, because you don't want to rely on other people, the idea is to become totally independent, right? So like, I don't like to tell people what to think, but I want you to find out like where to find the answers. And so like, I'm going to do another video about this where you can learn how to figure this out. I think if that's more helpful, because I don't know if I'm getting the point across in this video, but it helped me to learn, not even just by experiencing these individuals, how I was controlled by my emotions, but how my emotions were also controlling some of my decisions, right? So settling, that's fear-based. That said, I'm afraid that I don't know how to do this, you know? So I'm backing away from the challenge, and this, you know, keeps you kind of like stuck, but like also you're not your full potential. So it's interesting because you can see other people's potential without actually seeing the actions behind it. It's almost like see, and that's a mirroring effect, because like I have potential, but until I step into the action of doing, then it's still just potential. And so that's where when I learn how to mirror the people in my environment as a tool, it really helps me. Like, that's where I talk about the tarot cards and things. Tarot cards can feel like they're like right on, but if you don't step out into the action, you'll never know, right, where you're actually at. And so while I don't have a lot of use with the cards, and I do find them to be helpful in confirming certain things, I never put 100% into those cards because I always felt anxious around it. And it felt weird. I'm like, you know what? I've just seen, in the beginning when I first stepped into the tarot community, I was like, wow, this sounds like me. And I heard about the twin flame. And then I'm like, you know what? They would explain like my recent past, and like the storyline would sound exactly like me. But I'm like, how many storylines can there be? You know, you get betrayed, you get cheated on, you know, or they don't commit to you. Like, who the people that are on there are because they're looking for answers because they're lost. And so what I found, unfortunately, like in the tarot community, well, it's very it's entertaining. There are things I've learned there. To me, I had to move away from it because it felt like it was keeping me stuck in the past, and it kind of felt like training wheels. And settling for me, in my experience, because like I said, I didn't use the cards. Like, I don't even know how to do tarot. Like I would just use oracle cards because I was focusing on my emotions when I first started getting into the cards. I don't focus on, like, you know, I don't believe in telling the future. I don't believe in that. Because for me, it's like, if you don't take the action, then the result's going to be different, right? So you can't really base that on, like, it just felt like a waste of time for me. And like I said, it can be entertaining. I'm not putting it down. It's like, it's useful in its own right. But for me, I had to move away from it because it felt like all the storylines, like, while it's important to know your past and your history because you don't want to repeat it. And so that's another tool I use, is to recognize, like, what is my parents' lifestyle and how am I reflecting that right now, because it's not successful of health and wealth. And so I don't want to, we can really get caught up and convince ourselves we're doing something different when we're really settling, right? And so I had to learn where I thought I was picking a different partner and they're still just the same. They're just showing up differently in a different costume, but underneath they're the same person. And I'm going to be having to do the same thing with this person. I'm still going to have to carry all the weight. And that's, so like, different person, just because they're friendlier than the last person, if they're still not emotionally available, and if they're still not able to, be vulnerable with me and take part of the portion of the rejection factor, like if I'm literally having to spell it out that I'm interested in you and you can't pick up hints and you can't bring yourself to, throw a line in there to meet me halfway, that is what the relationship is always going to be like. If they lack communication in the beginning, it's going to get even worse. Like, it's a tip of the iceberg, so this potential that I recognize in people was just a tip of the iceberg. And it's literally, think about celebrities when they show you who they are in front of a camera. That's not who they really are. They know, like, if some of them, you can see them looking in the corner of their eye, like, they know they're in front of a camera. They're behaving that way but like, the true situation is, how does someone react at home? And so, like, that's where I also recognize people in workplaces and coworkers where I thought they were safe people, but they were not. And so, like, that's another thing. When I get my emotions under control and remove the confusion by asking the hard questions, and then I get accurate with, like, why I'm being drawn to certain people, emotionally instead of logically, then I start to put these people together, and I recognize, like, this is still the same. I'm still settling. I haven't done enough in my environment. My environment is still showing me I haven't changed enough or done enough, work to create that change to get the results that I want. And so, and then there's that, the emotional frustration of impatience and feeling frustrated, because you're just like, I wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. And I would like a person. But when you actually step back into your logical place, you're like, I'm actually fine by myself. I've actually gotten really good at being alone. And while sometimes it is lonely, that's when I reinvest in, like, my dogs and myself and my kids, instead of thinking I need to add something more. Like, if I'm still getting frustrated and if I still have stress, like the other day, I broke 3 glasses because I just had it. And if you had my life resume, you might understand why. And if you are watching this, you probably have your own life resume where you're like, I get it. Because I haven't thrown anything since 2017. I've had emotional outbursts in my home. Outside of that, I have not. And so I'm still very controlled in that way, where I'm just like, I just had it. And I just, like, felt like enough is enough. And so I never broke anything before, because I was always the one who I would have to clean it up. And I already had enough work on my plate. So I just, like, I don't want to break something, but fuck, did it feel good to throw something. But then I also recognize that's where I'm at still. So, like, I'm still stressed. So if I'm still unable to manage my emotions, and I only have 2 dogs in my care right now, and I'm just resting and recovering, I don't need to bring anything else into my equation right now. I already have enough to manage, and I'm not managing that yet. It's kind of like learning how to juggle. And it's just like, if I can't juggle 2 balls, I'm not going to add a 3rd one in quite yet because I can't handle it. So here's the thing where it's like, when you're doing too much, and you still sign up for doing too much and you can't prioritize, and you have children, now you become emotionally unavailable to the children. And that's what you received growing up. So now you're repeating that cycle. And then so like I also recognized like the men that I was still attracting, like they weren't willing to put themselves out, and I was willing to put myself way too far out. And then I also recognized they were kind of doing that thing where they let you know that they're interested, like you'd catch them looking at you often. So like there's something over here that you're interested in. I don't know what, because we haven't had a conversation, but I can see you like paying attention to me more so in a certain way. So I'm like, but you haven't spoken on it, and you're not willing to invest in any sort of like putting yourself out there. And so like I was still like, and then I realized, well, I'm still emotionally unavailable. And while I thought I'd done some work, which I have, I hadn't done enough work to get to where I want to be. So like, I'm like, why am I still attracting unemotionally available people? And I had to realize, because I'm still unemotionally available in the way that I'm exhausted. And if I'm not able to take care of myself financially, physically, and physically being cleaning my house, taking care of my dogs, financially, bringing in finances independently of myself, new money coming in instead of relying on old money that I still have. What else was it? Emotionally, if I'm still allowing certain things to, if I'm still stressed out, if I'm still emotionally unbalanced in certain ways, like, well, I'm better than before, I'm not there yet. And so that's when I recognize, okay, so like I'm not forcing this anymore, because before I used to force it when I was more emotional. I used to, force it. Now this is where I'm trying to let it come into me naturally, and it's still not showing up, but I'm no longer moving past my line, but it's still not, they're not approaching the line either. So now we're both, it feels like the people that I was attracting, like they were both like, not one of us are gonna budge. So like that feels emotionally unavailable. And what that means is like, yeah, I don't have anything to give to another person right now. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like recognizing where I'm at is so helpful, because that's the logical mind that's bringing the numbers in, and that's overriding the emotional place. So when I take a step back and I recognize, okay, this is actually what's happening, I no longer need to rely on the tarot and things like that. I no longer need to rely on things outside of myself, because even like therapists, I've had therapists that are not correct. I've had doctors that are not correct. So it really has gotten me to be more individual in self and relying on my information, because like I've had so many people outside of myself that are trying to tell me my reality is not the truth, and I know it is true. And so like you got to get good with that, because when you're moving independently, there's so many people that are codependent and rely on you. This is like in my opinion, I have not benefited much on like energy work or Reiki work. And I'm not saying it's not valuable. To me, it's kind of like a massage, which is helpful. But to me, it's a band-aid solution. And like, I don't rely on, I would not say energy work has helped me to get to where I am, right? Because while it's a very relaxing process to have someone focusing on you for a change, and that's where it's helpful, because it feels like you're always obsessing about everybody else and focusing on everybody else and overgiving to everybody else. I think it is helpful when I have had it in the very, very past when I first started spirituality. And it seemed very relaxing because they're focused on you. It's like a spa treatment, a verbal spa treatment, and that feels good. But if you think that by getting like an energetic healing, that's gonna erase all your problems, and now you're good, and now you don't have any karmic cords, or you don't have any it's just the way it's interpreted seems like people insinuate like, I'm going to remove this problem from you, and I'm going to remove this problem from you. And while I think that's helpful, kind of like a massage works out the knots, if I continue to do the things that create knots and stress in my body, I'm going to continue to need a massage. Do you see what I'm saying? And so like, it's not really eliminating the problem. It's more of a distraction. And well, it is part of the process, and I do find it helpful, because we can't do everything all at once. Remember, we're only juggling 2 balls, and if we add 4 more in there, then we're not, it's a setup for failure. So some of these things do help while you're working your way through it. But like I said, if I thought that me personally, I enjoy ASMR videos, and I enjoy Reiki, like chakra balancing videos, and I enjoy those videos as ASMR, and I enjoy watching them. They're useful. I'm just saying they're a tool and not a means to healing, in the way that, like, if you don't learn boundaries and practice your boundaries, um, like a shaman or a spiritualist isn't going to be able to come in and remove negative entities from you, because those negative entities don't exist. It's your habits, your patterns that are creating this dynamic. And so, like, that's where we remove the blame, and that's where we focus on this. So I'm going to cut this short because I want to do a different video based on spiritual misbeliefs and things, and I'm kind of leading into that right now, and this video is already long enough. So if you enjoyed this and you found it helpful, let me know. If you need more clarity on certain things, put it in there, because like I said, I'm just trying to format what I've learned into videos, and it's a challenge for me. So I'm just trying to format this in a way that is helpful. So let me know if I missed something, or if there's something you need more information on that you would find helpful. And yeah, I'm going to end this one here. I hope this was helpful, and be sure to like and subscribe if you're working on this, because this takes years, and I'm trying to give information that will help people who are wanting to learn to fast track, because I do think there's some areas that you can fast track if you're open to receiving the information. I think you can, like, you don't have to spend all the time that I did. Now there are certain lessons that we do get caught up on, and some we pick up fast and some we don't. So with that being said, I am gonna sign off. Hopefully this is helpful, and thank you for support, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.